Another kind of quick bread are biscuits, and the recipe I'm making today is your basic buttermilk, or not buttermilk, sorry, baking powder biscuits. Baking powder is the leavening agent that you use to make the biscuits rise. And they're called quick breads because they don't take a long time, they don't take yeast to rise. So this recipe happens to call for cream of tartar, some sugar, some salt, and baking powder. So I'm going to mix all of the dry ingredients together, get them mixed up good. The thing about baking powder is if you don't get that mixed in really mixed really good, you may get pieces where you can taste it. So it's important to get it stirred together and finely mixed. The next step to this is to take the shortening, and I'm using two different kinds, regular solid shortening and some butter. The butter gives it a little more flavor than strictly Crisco, plain Crisco, or any like lard or something like that. So this one calls for a little butter also. And you will take your pastry blender and you're going to cut the shortening into the flour. So you want this to look like coarse meal as you do that cutting. And I always like to clean this off every so often to make sure that I get everything mixed in, so that I have coarse looking, pretty, it'll be larger pieces. The better you get this cut in, the flakier and more tender your biscuits will be. And I pulled that butter out of the refrigerator not too long ago, so it's a little more solid than normal. But I don't want it melted because then this would be too, it would be too runny. Now this is not a drop batter, but this is a rolled batter. And you can also make this into drop biscuits, but you have to increase the liquid in it. And that would be at the next step if you were going to do that, and you just drop them by the spoonful onto a baking pan, or sometimes if you're making a casserole, a meat and vegetable casserole, then you can put this on top and it makes a complete meal that way. And I did preheat my oven. It's a fairly hot oven. For this recipe it called 450 degrees. So my oven is ready. These don't take too long to bake. So next thing you'll do, and it's pretty coarse, is you're going to make a well. In biscuits you make a well also. You're going to add milk to it. And you're going to pour that in all at once. Then you'll need your fork, and you're just going to lightly toss this. To mix this all together. And in some ways it resembles making pie crust, where we cut the shortening into the flour and then we add the liquid and we toss it with a fork. We stir it with a fork. Okay, now it's starting to come together. And I need to take my ring off. This one you're going to put it together into a ball, and then we're going to knead it because we want to work that gluten just a little bit. And I have some that's not, I have some crumbs here that I need to get worked in a little bit more. Sometimes you can't see that till you start forming that ball. Okay, now I have a ball, and it's cleaned the bowl pretty good. And this, I'm going to go to my kneading space over here, and this is going to require a little bit of kneading. So I want to put a little bit of flour down, not a lot. Move it around. And we're going to knead this. And this is what you do with most biscuits of any kind. Is now I'm going to fold it in half towards me and then push away with the heel of my hand. Give it a quarter turn, fold towards me, push away with the heel of my hand. Quarter turn, fold and push. And you want to, if it sticks, then you need to put a little more flour down. But the other side of this is you don't want to get too much flour worked into it. It's just a little bit more. Okay, and it looks like it just kind of like it could tear away. It's starting to form little separations, and that's what makes that flaky pie, I'm sorry, not pie crust, but the flaky biscuits, because you want those to kind of peel away when you eat them. So I'm going to flour my rolling pin and roll this out. Now don't roll it too thin. You want it about 3/4 of an inch. So remember, roll from the middle and lift at the sides, because we want this the same thickness all the way through. Sometimes you can pat it. I kind of like the rolling pin. That way it's pretty even all the way through. The next step is to take your biscuit cutter, round cookie cutter, and dip it in flour. And every time you make a cut, you need to dip it in flour and press down and lift it. So you want those all about the same shape or same thickness. And I'll put that on my baking sheet in just a second. So every time, dip it in the flour and then press down, or sometimes you have to give it just a little cut to get it to cut through everything. I've been cutting these out, and I really try to cut them as closely to each other as I can. When you put them on your baking sheet, they need about an inch clearance. Whatever's left over, you need to get it back together, form another ball, and you're going to roll this out and continue cutting out and filling the pan. So that's the next step. And I could almost pat that down without rolling it out. It's about the right, and sometimes if you get it too thin, then you can push up the sides so that they are the right thickness. And I have this much left over, and I think I'm going to put it in a pan and bake this separately, right along with that one there. It's about the right size, about the right height. So these will go in the oven, we'll bake them, and you want them to be nice and level, and they should pull apart in the middle. They need to rise nice and high and pull apart in the middle, and when you open them up, they can kind of come off in layers. So that's what a good biscuit looks like, golden brown on top, and hopefully that's what these turn out to be like. So I'm going to pop these in the oven, and then I'll show you what they look like when they come out. The biscuits are done. I'm going to get them out of the oven now. And some of them are correct and some of them are incorrect. So I want to show you, this is a good one here. You see how it's split? That's what it needs to do, but it's a little angled, and you really don't want that in a perfect biscuit. This one's a little more level. They're golden brown on top. This one is, where are you? There you are. This one's a little flatter, not quite as thick as some of the other ones. I guess they're not too bad, but you know, you can see how they've pulled away and they've split. This is the re-roll. I'm trying to find the camera. There! And it's very misshapen, but it eats just as good as any of the other ones. So this is what your biscuits basically should look like. Maybe just a little more level than what I have here. But they are also golden brown on the bottom. You want them nice and golden brown. These are best eaten warm. This is probably the best one of all of them. Very flat. It's pulled away at the sides. So when I open this, which I'll do right now, it has layers, and that's what you want, is just layers. And that's because you've cut the shortening into the flour, and that's what makes a very flaky, tender biscuit. And there are many variations on this. If you like the ones at Red Lobster, those are drop biscuits, and they've added cheddar cheese and some other spices to them, flavorings. But if you pull them apart, they just come apart very easily, and you can pull it apart again, and there's another layer there. So that's what a flaky biscuit is like. So eat them while they're hot. Put some butter on, put some honey on, strawberry preserves, whatever. But so this is another kind of quick bread.